Maplewood Heritage Preservation Commission on Thursday, November 10th at 7 p.m. Welcome. First, before we do roll call, I'd like to have our one-year veterans express how they've enjoyed the first year. David, can you go first?
It's been very interesting. I think we've actually accomplished a few things this year, which is kind of nice to see, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you again this next year.
That's great. Thank you. Barbara?
Yeah, it's been a really, really enjoyable year, and I just was so honored to be able to go to the state conference on heritage preservation. It really was an eye-opener and really helped with thinking into the future as to what we can do.
Okay, great. Thanks. And before we have roll call, I'd like to introduce Laura Koski.
Let's follow the agenda.
No comment.
Or
No comment.
Point of order. You're
No
out of
comment.
order.
No comment.
Chairman,
You
you're
can-
out of order.
You can be dismissed.
You're out of order.
You can be dismissed.
You're out of order.
Laura, welcome. We've had this kind of going on for a while. If he doesn't realize, I put him in that chair on this commission when I was mayor 20-some years ago. Do you remember that?
Bob, you're out of order. Follow Robert's rules of order.
You do not speak unless I recognize you. You recognize that? Are you hearing me?
When you're out of order, you're out of order.
Well, welcome, Laura.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I know it's coming up in new business. Should we wait till then?
Yes, if you want to.
Well,
Okay,
thank you. Thank you for the
Well,
welcome.
welcome. Okay, so first roll call. And we have Richard Curry,
Told me not to speak, yes.
John
I'm here.
Gaspar,
Here.
Bob Cardinal, David Hughes, and Barbara Kern.
Here.
Thank you. And Laura Koski. We do not have Nikki's not here. Is she going to continue, Joe?
She's not here. One of the things that I think is an obstacle is the fact that because of our transportation issue, I think we might have to come up with some kind of, I know the state legislature was looking at some kind of alternative for people who weren't able to make it to city meetings or open meetings because of some kind of health issue. I will connect with our city attorney to see if there is some kind of exemption that we can make so that she could at least remote in by phone. There is an allowance to remote in by phone. The only caveat to that is that you have to be, the official phoning in has to be in some sort of public place, and the public has to be able to access that place as well. So I would hate for her current situation to prohibit her from being involved in these meetings, and so I will try to see if there's an exemption because of an ADA issue.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Approval of the agenda are there any additions to the agenda? Any suggestions? I would like to make one under new business number 4, nominations for Heritage Preservation Award. Anyone else? Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda? Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Agenda is approved. We'll move on to approve the minutes. The minutes for last month, which was October. Everybody look at their minutes. October 13th. Any corrections or any additions? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
It was a motion to approve the minutes. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So let's go on to new business, swearing in of introduction of Laura Koski.
All right, so we'll do this we'll have the microphone here. Hang on. All right, so we'll just keep it simple. Have you raise your hand. I, Laura Koski,
I, Laura Koski,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of the Historic Preservation Commission,
of the Historic Preservation Commission
is my favorite part, in the city of Maplewood,
in the city of Maplewood,
in the county of Ramsey,
in the county of Ramsey,
and the state of Minnesota,
and the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
Terrific, thank you. Welcome aboard.
Congratulations. Well, welcome, Laura. That makes 6 of us. We are usually trying to get 7. So we have 1 seat. And we'll talk about that in the future. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, my interest in the Heritage or Historic Preservation Commission, whichever way you take it, is majorly from my profession, being an archaeologist, and I have a lot of experience when it comes to, the National Register process, the 106 process. That is the foundation of my job, is the 106 process. And then I have a lot of family history in the area as well, which spurs more interest in wanting to see it done justice. My grandpa worked in the 3M factory. My dad worked for 3M in animation. My mom grew up in North St. Paul, in one of the oldest houses in North St. Paul. Like, there's an old photograph of it, and there's nothing around. And now it's like near North High and part of a whole neighborhood. And then my husband and I recently moved to Maplewood a couple years ago after living here for a few years during college. And so there's a sense of family connection that makes me want to be part of the city and see the heritage of the city done well.
Well, that's great. Thank you. We're glad to have you. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, update on Ramsey County Poor Farm Water Tower. Joe Sharon.
Yes, there is, this has kind of been an ongoing thing. I put it as new business because some new information came up on it. There is a desire to take the tower down. The county is in the process of trying to figure out, I'm assuming in its next 2023 budget, to make way financially to do that. We, as we have gone documented back and forth in through email with the Michael Coop over at the State Historic Preservation Office, it was not on the original inventory, and so therefore it is not protected, and so that's kind of where we are at this point. They don't know, they don't have a time frame on when they will take it down, but I was told by our building officials that because it is an accessory dwelling, or not dwelling, but it's an accessory unit. I know I'm not getting the phrasing on that right, but it's an accessory unit on the property that they do have to apply for a demolition permit. My suggestion is that while the weather's still holding up, we should try to document the tower as best as we can. We'll work with our photography staff to do sort of an aerial shot of the drone, get as many ground shots as possible, and preserve sort of the documentation of it while it's still intact.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Joe?
I do have a question.
Laura?
So I know the only thing on the Poor Farm listing is the barn itself,
Yes.
And that's partly just a little bit of negligence in the initial listing when it was going on in the 70s, I'm sure. Most everything was listed in the 70s. So part of that, too, is the place and feeling and the setting around the barn is part of its integrity, which is what keeps it on the register. And I would think that the water tower is part of that setting, place, and feeling, because the barn was active up to the 1950s. And the water tower, I think, was put in 30s or 40s, at least on historic aerial imagery. But there isn't, of course, we don't have like a record as far as I know. Is there a building permit? I don't know if there's building permits for water towers. So I wonder if it's part of the visual integrity of the barn that might hurt its integrity overall as part of a National Register listing. But I also don't know enough about the water tower's history itself and its connection to the Poor Farm to say that.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, your concern is that if the tower does come down, it might jeopardize the barn's listing because you would take away the setting, the place, and the feel.
Yeah, once a structure is taken out of its place of feeling and setting of its historic value, like the water tower itself, I think would be significant for that. It can no longer be considered eligible or listed in some way or another. But I don't know if this would be enough to jeopardize it to that degree. I mean, Maplewood's already grown up so much around the barn to say that, but it would be something to consider. And then as an archaeologist, I also wonder what the deposits are like around the water tower for the original use of the poor farm, because I know there's never been any archaeology done on the farm. But I would just be curious to know what disturbance taking that down would cause to the original deposits from the poor farm's activity.
Thanks,
I think
Laura.
that's all I had to say.
Thanks, Laura. Rick?
Could we amend to try to save the tower on the national, or whatever?
I can check in with, like I said, our liaison at the State Historic Preservation Office, or the State Office of Historic Preservation, and see what the process would be, if there is a process, and connect in on your concern about its loss of historical designation.
I realize that's a hassle, so I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
But
why
this
we're
is
here.
also something part of my expertise is doing this kind of research. I don't know how much the HPC commissioners do on their own time in regards to this research, so I would default to any advice the rest of you have to give. But researching like how old the water tower actually is and what relationship it actually does have to the port farm. And if it doesn't have much association in its long-term history, then it's not something we probably would have to consider as an integrity issue.
Joe, I think you could talk with Laura as to what she wants to do on this, but I think we'd welcome any outside information. Yeah, I think so. Anybody?
Is there a security issue?
Yeah, there was. There
A
was.
safety issue?
Yeah, there is, I guess.
Yeah, there was concern initially with vandalism, and I believe people trying to climb up the tower. So that's initially why they were concerned, especially with the care center not being occupied anymore.
Okay, Laura, maybe we can put this on the agenda next month, and you'll have some understanding of how you want to work on it or not, and maybe reference with Joe. Okay?
Yeah, I can confer with Joe, and if it seems reasonable, I can do some research between now and the next meeting, too, and have a more informed opinion.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Good, okay. Thank you. Next is the Maplewood local designation nominations. I did see that we're supposed to be informed about this. There's a couple there, and I just made some copies. There's, get one to Joe. So I don't think we need to take any action tonight, but I'd just like to talk about this a little bit. So, Rick?
Do you have this list that we produced in 2017?
Well, why don't you bring this up later? That's not on the agenda.
Well, that's what you're asking here.
Actually, Commissioner, I think, Chair,
Yes.
the commissioner is making a point to, I think, what we're about to talk about now. In 2014, the city did a historic inventory report. We have that report available on our website. It is also incorporated when we do our 2040, 2060, 2030 comp plans, that there are about 15 or 20 properties within the city of Maplewood that are eligible, that are at least 50 years old, that meet some of the other criteria, that also can be sort of a list of historic buildings. We've talked about that list a number of times in this committee. It was part of when we did our goal setting and strategic plan process around this time last year. I could provide a copy of that list. Maybe that's what we could do. I'm happy to re-provide a copy of that list so we have it, and maybe we could go through. That's how we got to designating St. Jerome's. So St. Jerome's was one of the local designation possibilities that we decided to elevate to a nomination and do some research on it. So that's where that list came from. If I would entertain an addition to that list if possible, or if we want to zero in on any particular property on that list.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Okay.
I just wanted to put this in front of everyone so they know that this is something that we should look at. We do have some new members, so Laura and Dave and Barbara, this is something that you can review, and if there's something that comes to mind, we'd like to talk about it in the future. We don't need any action tonight. All right? Next, any thoughts or any comments? Anyone? Okay. Next, number 4, nominations for Heritage Preservation Award. I just pulled this out of the archives and maybe pass one to, there's 3 there, and maybe Joe, Richard. Barbara. You got one? No. Is that it? Well, is that it? Yeah. You got it? Okay. Yeah, all right. So, just glance at this. This is something that we have to usually do in the fall. And you can see that referencing those that have been given the award in the past, several, and then it says at the November HPC meeting, nominate candidates. So I don't know if we need to do that today. How does the commission feel about that?
What I would suggest, if we kind of follow suit as of past years, what we usually do is we advertise. So we do kind of twofold. One, we ask members of this commission to sort of brainstorm or confer with colleagues, confer with folks at the Maplewood Area Historical Society to get a sense of, are there any eligible people who would be eligible for this award? And then we also kind of, as that's happening, we also do advertising on social media and with Maplewood Living. I would probably hold off until, we usually kind of start the process November. We usually do the award sometime in March, and then we officially present the award at our April City Council meeting. So what I suggest is maybe in the January or February edition of Maplewood Living, putting the advertisement out. This way it gives the commission some time to sort of do its own due diligence on maybe finding someone who would be eligible for this award. Last year, 2021, we gave it to People-Lay. The year before that, we gave it to Judge Gary Bastian. And then the prior year, we had given it to Janice Quick. So that catches us up. If you look at the plaque in the back, it's given us our last several award winners. So I'd be happy to.
Well, that's a good background, Joe. I appreciate it. I know we got way behind because of COVID a couple years, so we're catching up. But this is a good timetable we can work with, and we'll just follow that, Joe, and putting that on the web.
But if there are folks who do have, and especially with Edie Molesky and the TJ in the audience here, if there are folks that people from Maplewood Area Historical Society know of to designate, this is not just a nomination by the commission. It's a community-wide nomination, so anyone for any reason could be presented to us for the preservation of Maplewood history. And it's not just history, it's the preservation, teaching of structures and culture and heritage and a wide variety of things.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll move on to unfinished business. Number 1, demo application. Joe Sheeran.
As of this point, there were no demo applications that were put in between now and the beginning of last meeting. I would anticipate that, unless there's a real need, we're kind of getting away from demo season because it's the weather. But we will keep an eye on demos as they come up.
Okay, good. Thanks, Joe. Number 2, update on St. Jerome's local designation. Joe Sharon.
So I don't know if anyone else wants to weigh in on this. We did meet with the parish elders at St. Jerome's. We know the building was built in 1942. Pretty nice architectural, but some of the issues we're running into is that digging in, looking through some of the records, the building has changed a couple of different times, especially on the interior. There's been an addition to the exterior. There is a couple of pieces that are interesting about it, but it doesn't quite have the deep historical significance or architectural significance that we assumed that it had. At this point, we know it's the first Catholic church in the city of Maplewood, and we believe it's possibly the third oldest church outside of St. Paul in Ramsey County. There is one older church in obviously the oldest, I think, is in Little Canada. The second oldest, it's a new church, but the parish was a St. Paul parish that moved here, I believe, in the 50s. The other thing I'm kind of looking into is trying to figure out who the original architect was. I'm still trying to track that down to see if that architect was part of a pattern of a broader history. At this point, knowing what I know of the 106 process, I don't see a whole lot there that would rise to the level of even a local designation, especially going down Commissioner Curry's checklist. There's nothing that really rises to that level of historic landmark. If we wanted to do something local, a Maplewood recognition, we could explore that. But as of right now, there's nothing that gets it to the state or national registry in its history.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Yeah, hang on, he's had
Any
a question.
comments or questions?
Okay.
Richard?
Joe, we can only, from what I've gathered on the state, is we can only recommend for the city.
Yeah.
If it's national savvy, or there's something for the national, the state has to take it
Yeah.
and go from there.
Yeah.
So we can put
Yeah.
St. Jerome's on our list, but it won't go.
Yeah. At this point, I don't think there's enough to put it on even the statewide list, just knowing what's kind of been out there so far.
So are they really having difficulty finding for you who the architect was?
Yeah, it's been a tough. I've looked through some of their records. I've been off and on and off of conversations with the Archdiocese. And the Archdiocese had some base information, but locally, I could probably dig a little deeper. But the brochures they gave me and everything that I have so far, I can't find the original architect. I can find the architect for the school, which was in the 50s, but not the original structure.
Hey, John can get it. What?
I can look.
He can look.
Okay.
Yeah,
If somebody has some know-how, I'd appreciate that.
okay.
Joe, have you heard back from them at all since that meeting?
No.
Because it kind of felt lukewarm as far as their wanting to really dive into it.
Yeah.
That was kind of a concern I had when we met with them, that
Yeah.
they were, maybe if we would do all the legwork, they'd be interested, but
Yeah. And I was hoping the Archdiocese had more information, and the Archdiocese gave me some basics, but then they referred me back to the parish.
Okay.
I mean, wouldn't that be
Barbara?
the deciding factor? I mean, that's something you really need to know before you make a final decision, whether, how important it is who the architect was. I mean, that I would think would be pretty important.
Yeah.
And since I'm pretty connected with the principal there, I'm of the school, and I know the parish priest, would it be all right if I just had a chat with them?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. I'll see if I can find anything else for you.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And maybe John will look too, right?
Yes, please do.
Can I also ask? I
Yeah,
don't
Laura.
know all that's locally designated up to date. Are there other churches on the local designation list?
There are other churches that are on our potentially historic list, but the only three things that were that are designated in Maplewood are the Poor Farm, the Savannah, and the Burntrip Heritage Farm. They're the only ones that have any kind of official designation. But there are a couple of other churches on the list of potentially historic.
Okay, so in terms of the local designation, it'd be maybe comparing the churches that we would have as options first. Because if it doesn't have a lot going for it as far as like unique architecture, we can't vouch for the architect. And I can also say SHPO records often do leave that blank. They don't always know. SHPO forms are often incomplete. So it might be good to also see what the other options are. Because if there aren't any churches locally designated, it could fit that bill if no other churches beat it out as far as significance go. But that would be kind of my driving factor of it being possibly the first Catholic church in Maplewood, one of the oldest churches, but nothing else seems to give it that oomph. At least for Maplewood, it could be locally significant.
All right, thanks, Laura. Anyone have anything else on number 2? Okay, we'll move on to number 3, new board member recruitment update.
Okay, so just as we got back to 7, Commissioner DeMoe decided to go to another commission, so now we are back to 6, and we are in the recruitment process to bring in another commissioner. The good thing is we've met a few of the statutory pieces of having people with history backgrounds, having people with archaeological backgrounds, and architectural backgrounds, so this one could really be a general member of the community. He's going to hold up I'll defer to Commissioner Kerry there because he's going to get to the next point I'm about to make.
The only thing is, why don't we use something historically other than the society? Because we know there's a conflict there.
This
a
is,
little bit.
okay, well, a couple of things. We are,
Poor farm.
couple of things. When you're trying to put a magazine together, you want the kind of picture that'll fit well, that's high res, those kinds of things. A lot of the older photos we have are just not to the quality where you could put them in a magazine and print them out. I do have this flyer that I've created that's going to go out on social media next week. The other thing that I really am debating with on this is if we want to start to document, it's important that we document all history, but if we want to start to document sort of the newer history, especially the oral stories, I want to honor our legacy here, our 150-year legacy, but I also want some of the imagery to be some of the newer. When I say newer, I mean within the last 50 years. So I always wrestle with what imagery we should be using and what phrasing we should be using in promotional material to get folks to this commission.
Okay, thank you, Joe. All right. That,
A lot of history.
Oh, yes, I know, but it's
More
their,
than Bob.
okay, that concludes the agenda, and we have visitor presentations. TJ, Maplewood Area Historical Society update.
Let's see here. Chair Cardinal, Commissioners, Commissioner Koski, welcome. Congratulations on your appointment. Mr. Sharon, thanks for having me tonight. It always seems like it's so long between our visits, doesn't it? I don't know. I feel like it's always a long time. Thanks for having me speak tonight. I'll just share with you what's going on out at the Bruin Troop Heritage Farm, the Maplewood Area Historical Society. The middle of last month, we had our Big Red Barn Folk Arts Fair, which we do twice a year. It is a fundraiser for us. We had over 60 vendors, and it was 36 degrees, and we saw 1,300 people. So I think that was a pretty good success. I'm proud of that. I don't know if anyone made it, but it was a good event, and we look forward to doing our next one in May. Over MEA break, we had our 2 breakaway camps, our kind of one-off day camps. It was our first time doing that this year, or ever, but this year was the first time we had done that. We had Architecture Farm on Thursday and Arts on the Farm full-day camp on Friday. We saw 40 students to that day camp over that break weekend. So that was pretty exciting to see all those kids out at the Bruin Troop Heritage Farm learning and exploring and creating. On Architecture Farm Day, they got to create their own farmhouse and lay out their own farm, and we talked about sections and building a township and all of that, so that was pretty fun. One parent said, "We are so grateful for these camps and the wonderful staff who make them possible." And So we'll see that continue over the next year. I'm proud and excited that we're going to be adding more camps to our schedule over the summer as well. Kind of in line with that, we received $5,500 from the city to support our day camps and youth education. So that'll be very nice to help us with expanding those camps next year. And I, again, am really looking forward to some new camps as well as our traditional camps that we do over the summertime. Coming up on Wednesday, November 23rd from 6 to 9, we have our second annual A Draft from the Past with Beer Choir Twin Cities. And that is a great event. It's a favorite. And despite the cold, we get folks together in the barn and sing some drinking songs and learn about this year the history of Minnesota brewing. So that'll be a fun night. Come on out for that. And then on Saturday, December 10th from noon to 5, we have St. Nicholas Tog on the farm. Of course, the Brew & Troop Heritage Farm is a German farm, and we'll be celebrating St. Nicholas Day on the 10th. St. Nicholas will arrive in style at 2 o'clock, and we have all kinds of other events and things happening. We'll actually be doing tours of the house this year during St. Nicholas Tog, and we will have some music. We will have a mini Christmas market and food, and so that'll be a fun event. It's already been extremely popular on Facebook, so this may be our biggest event of the year. So cross your fingers for good weather for us on December 10th. Another exciting thing that we're moving forward with at the Maplewood Area Historical Society is we have just posted a position. We are hiring a full-time in-house events manager and executive assistant. So if you know anyone that is familiar with events and weddings and that sort of thing, we are hiring a full-time position there. So that's pretty exciting as well. So we've come a long way in the last year or so. And I look forward to the next year as well. With that, I will open it up to comments or questions.
Any comments or questions for TJ?
Well, I was able to attend the folk art fair, and it was very cold and it was very windy. So it was really great to see so many people coming, and I really enjoyed it. Bought some pottery while I was there.
Great.
And it was a really wonderful variety of vendors.
Great.
So, yeah, it was really, really very impressive.
Thank you. Thanks.
Anyone else? Laura?
I'll put it on the record that your St. Nicholas Tog ad is very gorgeous and well done. I'm excited to go.
Thanks.
I like the lamp. that you
Oh,
put up.
yes. Thank you. So,
But is it a plug-in or is it hardwired?
no, it's hardwired. So
Okay.
maybe some
I'm
of
not
you
gonna
have
see
noticed,
any
and maybe
more
some of
than-
you haven't. If you follow us on Facebook, we're getting ready. So part of our tour for the house on St. Nicholas Tog is the living room, which a lot of people think is the dining room, but we call it the living room. Will be decorated like a 1912 German-American Christmas. So we had a lovely but not appropriate 1960s light fixture in there. So we went out and just found a circa 1915 light fixture, which we just replaced. So it's pretty, it looks nice. It fits in that space very well. So if you haven't seen it yet, check it out on Facebook. It's a lovely, lovely, unique light fixture.
Okay, thanks, TJ. Anyone else? Anything? Thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay, is there anything else for the betterment of our Heritage Preservation Commission?
I'll move for adjournment.
Okay. Anything else? We're adjourned.